Hello everybody, Elijah here. Welcome you all to another Epic 7 video. And today, we're going to be doing an account review for the Resolution series? Resolution? No. Triumph. It was the Triumph season of RTA. I'm going to go ahead and change my frame because I actually think I really like this. Where is it? Is this it? Yeah, the Triumph frame. I think it's cute. Oh, why is I never got my arena board. Never mind. That's besides the point. We're just gonna go over the heroes that I have built that I used during the Triumph season. There will be some heroes that don't have gear on currently because their gear was given to other people, but I will be inserting a screenshot of like what their build was when I was using them because I typically screenshot all of my builds and share them in my guild chat and stuff like that. But that being said, we're going to have to get started because we have like a good bit of heroes to go through. We're starting off with Edward Elric, who started off the season kind of a miss because not that many people were using them. Not that many people were kind of, didn't really see the hype in regards to using him. Then debuffers became crazy, and then he kind of just like skyrocketed, and he was in everybody's draft, right? Everybody was picking this unit. Edward is like the only real good, like, I guess, bruiser to deal with debuffers, especially since, Crimson Sea is being nerfed, and unless you are using a bruiser that can't be debuffed, like stun and stuff like that, then it's very hard to really draft them, unless you have cleansers and things like that. So this is his build. I wish he was faster. That's probably the only thing that I would improve on stat-wise. I guess I could show you guys the individual gear pieces, but don't expect anything too crazy because, again, I am not like some legend RTA player, so a lot of my gear, there'll be some pretty insane pieces, and there'll be some pieces that are kind of just like meh and not really that big of a deal. But onward to Adventurer Ross, who I didn't draft this much this season, purely because I don't know, I just didn't like playing slow. Playing aggro became more and more of a tradition for me, like something that I enjoyed doing. So I just played more aggro, and if I were going to play Adventurer Ross in a more aggro draft, I would want him to have like 240 speed, somewhere around there, but I just don't have the gear to give to him. I like this build because he has a bunch of HP, and in 2 cleavers, they typically can't one-shot him for the most part, and he can like take up a lot of damage having this amount of HP. But a little bit of ER just for the off chance of like a Spec 10A stun or something like that. Then we have ae-Winter, who I removed her gear throughout the season and gave it to other people because I started using her less and less. But when she was, like, first came out, when she was relevant, she was, like, a really good unit that I would use into Destina because Destina, she had to use her skills. She had to use her non-attack skills, right? And ae-Winter would just ramp up and she would just do a ton of damage. Obviously, I'll have, like, a screenshot of the build. You probably already see it. But yeah, that's really much... I don't know what happened to her. Like, she was, like, really relevant, and then she became not. And I think her relevancy stopped when Edward became picked a lot more often, because you can't really pick Winter into Ed. It's a very hard matchup. Like, you're just not going to do that well, because he probably is going to win the 1v1 if it was the 2 of them left. So, yeah. Then we have Kayron. He's, like, my anti-solo cleave unit. Has a little bit of ER, no speed. If I did pick him, he got banned, so I didn't really get to use him at all this season. But if they did first pick Sid, he was kind of like the go-to response to that for those like Sid plus like Melissa cleavers or whatnot. They kind of have a hard time dealing with a Kayron, especially if they don't have the effectiveness to debuff him or strip him from their other units or something along those lines. Here we have Mercedes, who her gear got nerfed throughout the season. She used to be a lot tankier. She used to have a lot higher attack, but I kind of took away some of her gear pieces to give it to other units on counter set, and I still have yet to plus 15 this unit. I don't know why. Mercedes, I rarely draft because you don't really ever need to draft her. She's kind of like to deal with heavy green units, or if you're dealing with somebody who's drafting Landy plus Spectine, I think Mercedes is a great option or response to that because of Magic for Friends as well as just all of her AoEs, and it just works out very well. Typically a must ban into those drafts. Then we have Milim, who I think I used probably twice. She doesn't really have like the gear that I would want her to have to like draft her reliably. I see a lot of people now have their Milims on counter set. I also completely forgot that I was supposed to show you guys the gear pieces. I don't really think, I mean, you guys get the whole stat outline. I think as long as you guys get the bottom left stats, then you pretty much get the idea of how the units build and how they work. But yeah, this is my Milim and her build. I rarely used her. She was good when ae-Winter was all over the place, but I don't really see ae-Winter anymore. I would pick her in that situation, because if ae-Winter kind of like miss with that, with her stun, then Milim just goes ham, essentially. Then we have Politis, who, this is my Diene build. She doesn't have her sword currently. Her sword would have been, I have like no on my Ren, but this was what her build was prior to me removing that. These are her stats. Her Diene build, some effectiveness, some ER. You know, I feel like for her to not get debuff, she would need like 200 ER. But into a low effectiveness team, this build does work. And whenever I'm going up against like certain Luas, if I can kind of like predict that they don't have that much effectiveness, then I love the moment of them trying to sleep my Politis and then failing to do so. It's like pretty funny. But yeah, that's typically more your lower gear score Luas. And as I climbed into the bracket, obviously this build, I couldn't get away with it. And I would probably opt back to her DPS build, which I'll show you what her stats were when I did have her on a DPS build. But I don't know. We'll see. Politis kind of fell off a little bit because not that many, there wasn't that many opportunities to kind of like use her into even people with non-attack skills. Like, it's kind of hard to pick her a lot of the times. Here's my Carrot. I don't ever draft Carrot. I don't really like her build. Her build's kind of all over the place, but it is what it is. A lot of her gear has been taken away from her because she used to have really good gear, and then you know, as the season progressed, obviously I replaced it with pieces that I didn't really care too much about. But I like to have her have gear on, just in case, as like a must-ban unit into a team where they kind of like have to deal with the Carrot. In those situations, though, she typically just gets banned. Then we have my ae-NINGNING, who I really enjoyed using when I was using her, and then I gave her gear away to somebody else. And then now I've given it back because I really like to use this unit, but I don't really use her that much. She isn't like super fast. She is typically only used into like Arowell teams. I like to make sure she has as much effectiveness as I possibly can get on her, just so that I can actually strip away the escort buff from a lot of different Arowell builds. Unless they're like a 200 ER, you know, Arowell is kind of like, for the most part, I can strip away the buffs from that. And yeah, those are her stats. Then we have Choux, who I don't really like Choux. I don't really draft this unit. Typically as a counter pick unit if I do draft her, but these are her stats. She kind of has whatever gear. If she was triple S, she would have 100% crit, and that's really all there is to Choux. I cannot stand going up against this unit because she will counter and swoosh or whatever a million times. I also can't stand drafting this unit because my Choux won't counter or fruce or do any of that of any sort, so yeah. Rim, I did not draft at all this season. Like, not even a little bit, because I don't even think you can really draft Rim. Like, at all, to be completely honest. She's kind of hard to use. I mean, even into, like, counter cleave, she is still a hard to use unit. ae-KARINA I didn't use until the end of the season. when I decided to randomly gear her again. And these are her stats. This build is a lot better. When I first tested her out, she didn't work out that well, but I didn't have that much defense at the time. And this is like a lot better build, and she actually works out really well into dealing with aggressive or cleave drafts. And she's a lot of fun. When I do get the teams where she's usable and she actually does work, she's a lot of fun to use. Obviously, she needs a little bit more mola, but I typically use her with the idea that there won't be like a turn 2, right? GCR pushes up, she S3s, and then they're like surrendering because their DPSs all die to her AoE damage. You know what I mean? So yeah, this is her build for that. Then we have Krau, who I draft. I think I draft a lot towards the end of the season after he got his EE for the, increased provoke chance. But aside from that, I don't really use this unit. I think Yulha is probably like a better unit to use, but I also really like him being able to grant a defense buff to everybody because, it allows you to sustain, allows your team to sustain, especially more slower, tankier teams. It's really nice to have, but I don't really use Krau often. Like, I try to force pick him, but it doesn't really work out. I typically pick him into Edwards. If I do see an Edward and I don't have like another reliable like blue DPS or blue unit to like counter that, being like, a Choux or something, then I just pick Krau. Then we have Lua, who is probably like my favorite unit of the season. Like, I love Lua. She's, I don't know, I just love drafting her. This is her build. She has like my fastest speed gear, give or take, which is why her stats are like all over the place. The effectiveness is not that high, and it's because I just don't have like better speed pieces. But the pin set is pretty nice when she does, crit somebody. She only has 32% crit, but when she does crit, the damage is actually pretty heavy into like, you know, squishier units. I've had a moment where it was like her versus a Spectine and she won because she just got a bunch of lucky crits and the damage was enough, and I thought that was amazing and pretty entertaining to watch. And she's on Guiding Light too because I do not want to have to deal with Zio at all. SSB, I never draft. I don't know if I like this build. This is kind of like whatever gear. Yeah, I just never draft SSB. But her ML form, like Bellona, ML Bellona, I really do hope I get that unit because I think she's a pretty cool looking unit, and I most definitely will be using her a lot if I do get her. Ida, her gear was given away to somebody else, it seems. I'll put a screenshot of what her build was when I did used to draft her, use her a lot. Ida, even in like an aggro draft, is really hard to draft her because Violet exists, as well as, and I had to deal with Edward a lot of the times. And on top of that, she just, unless you have like a defense break, she doesn't do enough damage. So unless you're doing like Ran Ida, she doesn't do enough damage. At least from my experience with the build that I was using. People also Green Armin, another really good counter into Ida, because, if she miss, then Armin counters and, stuns everybody, and it's really annoying. But yeah, that's Ida for you. Montmorancy is actually a unit that I use a little bit towards the end of the season because Pirate Captain Flan, or Flan, is such a nuisance, and she's just so hard to deal with, and you quite literally need a cleanser that has an insane amount of ER. I don't have Destina build. I probably won't build Destina. I just can't bring myself to do it. I just don't want to do it. I just don't like Destina. I don't know. I would rather just use this unit. And she worked out very well into those situations with her cleansing, things like that. So it was pretty nice. And these are her stats and her gear. Diene, she doesn't get used ever. This was what her build was prior to me removing all of her gear. But I think after they removed the Soul Weaver speed buff, a lot of people just stopped drafting this unit. I might give her some like throwaway ER speed gear on like a slower build, and maybe use her just in case if I ever want to draft her. I just feel like there's so many units nowadays that can just deal with her and counter her. That is kind of hard to use her. Um, throwback when she was like an opener way back, you know what I mean? But now there's so many other openers that are just way better, and you could just use on them and rely on them. But if I were to play more standard or slower, I think she would be a good like arsenal unit to still have built. Alencia, who I still have not removed off the Grace of Growth, maybe one day I'll actually plus 15 her, but this is her build, this is her stats. She was used when Death Dealer Ray was released, and I tried to like use them a lot together. She works out very well. She is, I don't know if she's too slow, because in most situations, if I don't have a cleanser, she can very well just get debuffed or like stun locked or just never take her turn because of her speed. So I don't know, maybe I'll make her faster, but I kind of wanted her defense and health to stay around that mark and crit damage and crit rate to be as close to 85% because of, to have close to 100% crit, right? Rimuru, I don't use this unit at all. I think he's geared for like anti-cleave, but even then I wouldn't really rely on this unit for anything. But a lot of people never really know how Rimurus are built, and because of that, they can still be scary. This gear is kind of just hand-me-down, and I just was like, let me give him a bunch of HP and still have somewhat close to 100% crit. And this is his build. So cleavers, I guess I kind of use this unit into, or I would use this unit into, but typically I get very scared about drafting this unit. I feel as though, if I don't kill what I need to kill with the fixed damage, then me drafting him was a complete waste. And there has been moments where he did not kill the squishy unit or whatever when I needed to kill them. Zahhak. This is my Zahhak build. Yes, he has like 75% crit, but that's just because, it's really hard to sit at that 50% crit. But because he doesn't need 100% crit, I was able to use some of my low crit rate fast speed gear, right? Like this ring right here is a pretty insane ring, 23 speed, that I just had nobody to use it on. And Zahhak was like the perfect unit to use it on, essentially. And then we have this piece right here, 21 speed, where, and then everywhere else is kind of just, I guess, where he gets all his other stats from. I don't really have the most insane speed gear, but he is kind of like my backup opener, to be completely honest. He has outsped a lot of cleavers, a lot of like slower cleavers, like low end gear cleavers, I guess. Speed RNG has always been on my side. And, if I'm concerned, or if I feel as though he will take the first turn, I just like to draft him because it can, he's close to 290 speed, which I want him to be at like 290, but, I just don't have essentially the gear to do that yet. This gear probably would be better on like a different unit, like an ae-Sid or something like that, but I don't even think ae-Sid is even worth drafting anymore now that Zio exists, right? Then we have my Senya, who I also rarely draft. I still have yet to Mola this. I really should Mola this, and which is why I don't really draft her that often. But this is her stats. I might change her build. I might lower her attack and put her on an ER build, but I just don't have the gear to do that yet. And I just don't feel like going through gearing Senya because I just don't really draft Senya at all, really, to be honest. And she's on like the greater attack E. Here's my Landy. Now, my Landy used to be on a speed immunity build, and she used to be on Guiding Light, but Lua got that Guiding Light, or actually another unit got that Guiding Light, being Blair Witch Hysteria. And then I was like, well, I still want to have Landy geared for the sake if I need to use her. So she's on this build. She has some bulk, and, these are her stats. Very low damage, obviously, because she's built to be tankier, But even with these stats, I don't even think she will stand toe-to-toe with a Milim. Like, a Milim will still probably delete her, to be completely honest. But the times where I have drafted Landy with these stats, she gets banned. So, like, it didn't even matter. You know, I draft her more to scare people, not necessarily to hope that she gets into the draft, because this build is really not the best build to have on Landy, in my opinion. So, yeah. But with the new buff to Wall of Order, maybe that might be a better artifact for this, where she can grant herself a barrier and stuff like that. And she also can grant herself, like, greater attack. So I don't know. I'll have to test that out when Wall of Order gets buffed. Roana, you know the deal. You just throw on whatever gear on Roana and hope that she does her job, right? Like, there's really not much to say. I don't think I ever drafted this unit because, you know, so many people have injury nowadays that it's kind of hard to draft her still. But yeah, this is my Roana stats. Conqueror Lillias. Love this unit. Never really draft her though, because whenever I draft her, things don't go well at all. I don't know why that is. Things just always end up not working out in my favor whenever I draft Conqueror Lillias. But yeah, these are her stats. I do try to draft her occasionally, but she also gets banned a lot. Like, Lua and Conqueror Lillias get banned probably the most that I see. Well, aside from Belian and AOL. G-Purge, I don't even know why he's here, to be completely honest. But I did use him once, and there is a video of me using him, one of my RTA videos of me using him, and he did work out, I guess, for the most part, right? I drafted him, Adin, and then a bunch of stealth units, and it worked out. So, you know, there was that option. Lionheart Cermia, one of my more favorite units of this season as well. I love this unit. These are her stats. I wish she was more tankier. She could use a lot more HP, but, you know, her stats are, I guess, decent if I draft her with, you know, a knight so that she doesn't get, like, one shot instantly. But, you know, a Rylet will one-shot her without damage mitigation for the most part because she has such low HP, and it's kind of something that sucks. But when I do draft her and she does work out, she works out super, super well, and I love using this unit. I love this unit's design, and she's been a lot of fun, especially for this season. Ambitious Tywin, I actually didn't draft at all. This is actually his build for when he gets his buff that I'm going to be testing out. So yeah, this build, I don't necessarily know how good it is or if it will work, but yeah, on to the next. Belian, I permaban, so I don't see this unit, and I don't draft this unit at all because she's always banned. I rely very heavily on souls for a lot of my drafts, so this unit can't exist for me simply because of that. Arowell, I don't really draft Arowell that often because I don't like to play slow, but when I do draft her, she does work out well. She's a good unit to use. I don't know if, because she's so slow, I feel as though I might change her to one of these artifacts that increase, like one of these artifacts that increases her CR, because you get like double the effect through her, you know, skill tree passive as well as through that, and she just turns cycles very well. I might do that. I might change that build, but I also really do like the crit damage decrease from all allies. Yeah, that's what I'm trying to say. I do like the damage reduction from this. Adin, an amazing unit. She used to be built a lot faster, like 250 speed, but then I nerfed her gear a little bit. I didn't even say nerfed it. I just allocated her stats elsewhere into like attack and crit damage. She has her artifact on because I typically draft Adin when I am going up against a dark team or a team that have a bunch of dark units, and I do this for the hopes of one-shotting units like Mediator Kawerik, units like Apoc Ravi, right? Like, this is why I have her on this artifact, to better one-shot those units. So yeah, on to the next. Specimen Sez his gear is actually on Landy. I'm going to be completely honest with you. His gear is on Landy, or most of it is, and I'll show you what his build was when he had that gear on. I did actually use him a little bit in the RTA season with Arowell and Solitaria. So, you know, he was a fun unit to use. Not really a reliable unit, but if they were stunned, he did kill. Every time, guaranteed. Commander Pavel, if I did draft him, he got banned, so I didn't really get to use him. I also think he does not have the correct gear pieces, because one of these gear pieces are not one of his original gear pieces, because he normally would have 100% crit, but he doesn't, and I don't know why. I don't know what happened. Anyway, I rarely use this unit. I don't really have enough units to enable him to use him, to be completely honest. So, but he has gear on to scare tankier players, if anything. Faithless Lidica, I used to use her a lot in the beginning of the season when I did have Guiding Light on her, but because I had to give Guiding Light to other units, I just removed her gear and gave her gear to other people. These were her stats when, you know, she did have gear on, but yeah. She was a fun unit. I would like to re-gear her, but I just need more Guiding Lights. Like, I really need Cerise Banner to have a rerun or something like that, so I can get more Guiding Lights, so then I can actually re-gear her and use her again. Washer Shuri is just a speed imprint that's reliable, I guess. He has this artifact, which is nice, but I rarely use speed imprints or even cleave, so I don't really, you know, I'm not really bothered by that. AOL, another unit that kind of always gets banned, which is why she doesn't have gear. I actually don't have a screenshot of what her build was when she did have gear, but I would tell you that it was probably around like close to 200 effectiveness and close to like 240, 250 speed. Something like that is what I would have on her, but I just don't gear this unit because I don't draft this unit because she's always banned. Sage Bellona Sezon actually was a pretty amazing unit this season, especially dealing with aggro players for me a lot of the times. He's on Bastion. I should probably fully plus 30 this, but I just haven't purchased all the Bastions from the guild shop yet. I will at some point, just to get the most ERs possible, right? Because I don't know what this is at max, but if this is at like if this is like 50% at max, this is like definitely like something that I should definitely try to invest in to maxing out. But even with this build, he works out perfectly fine. He typically doesn't get debuffed. Unless I'm going against somebody who has very high gear score, he typically doesn't get debuffed for the most part. Solitaria, love this unit. Don't really draft her that often. She used to be on Abyssal Crown, but I changed it to this artifact just for the sake of having her do some damage in fights. Just because, you know, I would like her to be able to, even if it's just chip damage, to add a little bit of damage to fights. I did not mean to click on that, but yeah. So yeah, this is what her build is. I wish it was 270 speed. I really want a better ring for her. I just haven't got it yet because, you know, I would prefer her to be 270 speed, and she has these pieces because they have high speed rolls. So yeah. DJB, another great unit, somebody that I rely on a lot. I wish his... I'm going to probably change his build, lower his speed just slightly. Like, probably like make him like 250 speed, but make sure he has like 200 ER. Because he does occasionally get debuffed, and since I do use this artifact, I don't think he needs to be 260. I think 250 plus this artifact, and then, you know, him being at like 200 ER is probably a lot better for me. Because, you know, he gets the CR push for the allies being debuffed, but it doesn't mean anything if he also is the one getting debuffed, you know what I mean? So yeah, probably going to work on fixing that at some point, or just making it faster, you know, who knows. Maid Chloe, another really fun unit, but I don't really draft her that often, or really ever. When Maid Chloe plus Arowell was like really relevant, like a lot of people were drafting those two units together, that's when I draft Maid Chloe. Because I was testing that draft out, but for the most part, I don't really play super slow standard. So, you know, this is kind of her build if I were to draft her, but she doesn't get drafted that often. Apocalypse Ravi was another really interesting unit for me because even when she was super meta and all over the place, I still didn't really draft her that often. And I changed her gear to be on counter set and to have her have like a lot more HP. She used to be on a speed pin build, but this is now her build on counter set and pin. And Crimson Sea is going to be nerfed, so I don't really know what artifact I'll put her on after the Crimson Sea nerf. But yeah, I wish her defense was a lot higher. But other than that, I think her stats are okay, right? To be an anchor, to be somebody that could just take a bunch of damage, this is pretty decent. Bad Cat Armin, I didn't really draft at all. I drafted her when Death Dealer Ray was prevalent, and I drafted her when I was testing out Death Dealer Ray, and I also drafted her when Rylet was used a lot. Those are the two units I used to draft her with, but aside from that, I just don't use this unit. And I haven't mullet this, which I kind of need to mullet this to be able to use her effectively, so yeah. Designer Lilibet, I don't use. She has gear on if I do decide to use her, but I typically just don't use her because she just never works out for me. I don't know what artifact I should put her on. I probably should put her on, like, I guess a more damage artifact, maybe? I don't know. She just doesn't do her job. Whenever I draft her, she just doesn't do her job. Simple as that. Inferno Khawazu, he has gear on for the sake of having gear on, because into certain matchups, like dealing with a ball and Sazan or something like that, he's a really good counter pick to have. And he's on this artifact for the extra burn chance, and his EE is the silence one. So if he doesn't kill, they can't do anything. So there's that. But normally he kills for the most part. Mediator Kawerik, another unit that I love, but I never really draft, like ever. I kind of want to change this effectiveness to be ER, like have him have like 100 ER versus like, you know, like you get what I'm saying, like 80% effectiveness or whatever. That might be better, but I don't know. I rarely draft him. If I do draft him, it's because I'm going to draft a bunch of debuffers and I don't want them to have the unit, right? That's typically when I draft him. Strays. This is my Strays build. He could be a lot faster, I think. I think he would probably need to be like 250 speed to be more reliable. Just so he could like be a standalone unit. He is on this artifact because I typically pair him with Zahhak. So at least he gets a few, stacks in. Right? So if I'm pairing him with Zahhak, that's 2 turns. So then he has 100% crit, right? Zahhak S2s, then S3s, and then Strays goes. Essentially, that's why he's on this artifact, so he has 100% crit when he does take his turn. And that's kind of like how he's set up. Faithless Lidica, I don't draft, like, ever. But she has gear on if I do ever decide to draft her. I really like this unit, but because DJB, as well as, who else? Ning, I'll have Barrier Invasion, and I don't want to ban those units. I just don't draft Fallen CC, but she is still a good unit to have. And I don't have this mullet for some reason all the way, but yeah. Anyway, Blair Witch Iceria, definitely an MVP this season. When she got her buffs, this is why I have Winter not build anymore, because I would just use Blair Witch Iceria to deal with Destinas, and a lot of the time, because, the inability to revive and just her debuff, she has a soul burn to ignore effect resistance, and it was just great, right? I have solo DPS with Blair Witch Iceria because, when Guiding Light does actually proc, if she doesn't get targeted, it works out amazingly, and I love this unit. If you have this unit, I think you should definitely build her. If you, are thinking about getting this unit or summoning for this unit, you definitely should summon for her, right? And any future banners. This is an amazing, amazing unit. I love the changes for her. She's a lot of fun to use, and I love this. Spectre Tenebria, she went through a couple build changes throughout this season, but now she's on Unity set because why not? I don't know. I just wanted to put her on Unity set because I thought it was fun, and I had like this piece as well as this piece. So I was like, you know what? I might as well try to put this onto somebody, and it's on my Spectre. Now, very rarely she's dual attacks. Mostly what happens is she will S1 and somebody will dual attack with her, which I don't think that's how Unity set works, but I don't know. Very interesting. She's a pretty standalone, often picked unit by me, because again, I like to rely on souls, and Spectre Cermia is just such a safe unit to have. I would like her to be faster though, like 200 speed versus like 180, but she is on lifesteal still, because I haven't removed that gear. I might put her back on speed set, I don't know. I have seen some people put her on destruction. I don't know if I have the destruction gear to give her, like good destruction gear. Like I would put her on like destruction plus unity. That might be pretty interesting to try out. But the lifesteal has helped me out. Like there has been situations where it was just her against the world, and because she had lifesteal, it did actually help her out a lot. So there's that. And then last but not least, for I guess RTA units that I've used throughout the season, Death Dealer Ray, who is a very hit or miss, right? If he works extraordinarily well, right? He controls an entire team, he sleeps people, he injuries, right? He works out amazingly. But when he doesn't work, it's really, really bad. Like, it's embarrassing. And this is the stats. I think I want to lower his effectiveness to give him ER to test that out. But I just don't have the effect resistance gear. I have so little effect resistance gear. But these are his stats for now. With these stats, though, into most Destinas, he is capable of debuffing them, because with the effectiveness buff, right, he has 200 effectiveness. I would maybe even consider trying to get him to have 200 effectiveness as a base, and then plus this 250 effectiveness, and then Destinas just cannot resist him, right? Unless they have like insane gear, but I like to be able to soul burn S1 sleep, right? That's what I just like to be able to do. I also just like him to be able to sleep with this as well, because it works out pretty well. And yeah, those are all of my, I guess, RTA units that I used throughout the season for the most part. There are other units that I have geared, but I just did not use them this season, or they were banned this season. So hopefully I get to use them next season and things like that. I'm going to go ahead and call it quits here, though. I tried to do this as fast as I can. This is still going to be a super long video, obviously. I'm excited for preseason because I'm going to be testing out some very funny builds. I'm excited to see what the next season brings in for us. Who knows? Maybe Ren might be like OP or something. Probably not, but a guy can dream. Anyway, if you did enjoy the video, please remember to like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you all in the next video. Peace out.